This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hey folks, we have a new sponsor here at the Crypto Conversation. Today's episode is brought to you by Coinsbee.com, the go-to platform for spending your crypto. With the biggest selection of brands across all gift card platforms and live in over 185 countries, Coinsbee supports the most relevant local brands for your everyday needs. They support more than 200 cryptocurrencies and offer a vast product range from gift cards, game points to mobile phone top-ups. Can't find what you're looking for? No worries. Coinsbee also offers Visa and MasterCard prepaid cards. So just go to Coinsbee.com and turn your digital assets into real-world possibilities. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is Dermot O'Riordan. Dermot is the director of the Pocket Network Foundation. And well, this is all about DePin. I think that's how we say it. DePin, Decentralized Physical Infrastructures, which I'm not super aware of actually. So, going to be fascinating to learn all about this. Welcome to the show, Dermot.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure, Dermot. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show, just before we dive into DePin. Maybe could you please introduce yourself? Love to hear a little bit about who you are, your backstory, and what led you here.
Great. Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm really a bit of a generalist at heart, and I guess I've kind of worn many different kind of hats my last kind of 10 plus years or so working in the technology industry. And I guess it's kind of more of an aside, but interesting to see so many different people in the crypto space seem to come from so many different backgrounds, wearing so many different hats, but we all seem to be kind of aligned by similar values and drawn to different aspects of the space that really kind of calls, I guess, to kind of our own kind of, I guess, personal kind of values and then things that we want to see different in the world. I guess for me, I've been a startup operator in Dublin and in London. I have actually also been a lawyer advising, again, startups at the earliest stages, from raising first round checks of kind of 50 to 100K to kind of later stage unicorn rounds, also advising some of the bigger name European and global VCs as they're also backing some of these high growth founders and their startup teams. And I guess throughout this whole period, both before joining crypto in 2017 and after it, I've been involved in various communities that are helping startups, founders really come together and deliver value, and way beyond just the idea of kind of transactional networking, really of how do we coordinate better, how do we support each other, how do we work together to deliver something that's more impactful and beneficial. And before getting into what I'm doing now, I guess since early 2020 until the start of last year, I was a partner at a VC fund whose mission was to back the builders of the new open internet. So they were a $30 million seed fund investing solely into crypto and Web3. And that actual focus at Eden Block was purely on infrastructure. And infrastructure, as we defined it quite broadly, was teams solving problems. There's a lot of cool things happening in the crypto space. But for us, a great filter was just, there's a lot of cool things that could happen in the future as well, but really is like, what is the problem? What are you solving? And for us, that was backing teams that are solving these core problems because we saw them as some of the kind of key headwinds blocking some of the progress in the space. And that was data infrastructure that we might get into as part of today's conversation. So teams like Economy, making it easier for people to interact and improve the UX of the crypto layer. Teams like Jensen, which is very much a DePin team in the space who are aggregating GPU compute to actually improve scale and lower cost for training up machine learning training models. Pocket Network, which I'm now part of as a director on the foundation, which again is using a blockchain to really just do something much better than you can otherwise do, and that is actually to deliver the most reliable, performant, and cost-effective access to open data. And I guess maybe that we'll put a pin on that in terms of DePin, and we come back to. But yeah, so kind of really just thinking about these teams solving these core problems. And I joined the Pocket Network Foundation at the start of this year for I guess two key reasons, really. One, I'm incredibly passionate and motivated by their mission. I think if you believe that the value that resides on blockchain and these kind of open rails are going to get more and more valuable over time, I think how we access and interact with that layer is going to get more and more important, and it should be of fundamental importance for all of that. So making that as reliable, performant, and cost effective to everyone, I think, is a mission I think a lot of people can get behind of, and I'm proud to be part of Pocket helping drive that. And secondly, I guess that kind of goes back to kind of I guess what kind of pulls me in and what kind of excites me about technology. It's like technology is this amazing lever for good, but actually it really does need to improve and create positive impact for humankind and what we do every day too. And actually really at the heart of Pocket strategy and actually how it does what it does better than you could otherwise do without its kind of its blockchain and everything else that's part of its network is actually to harness the power of its community. And that has been a thread that's always been really exciting for me of how do we coordinate better over the internet. And that started with the kind of rather naive DAO back in 2016 was kind of the light bulb moment for me, back to everything we've been doing since. I still don't think we're doing all of that better, but I think a lot of the things that we're doing in crypto kind of shows the path and gives us some of the answers of the way forward of how we can coordinate much better as humans, leveraging blockchain rails to deliver something that's so much more impactful and better for all of us.
Yeah, very, very nice. Very well said. Thank you, Dermot. And do you want to just give us? I mean, we sort of understand what it is, then I guess. But DePin, like as I said, I really wasn't aware of this until a few months ago. But you can see, it is starting to pop up as a term on some of the the various different crypto news sites and so on. I see there's a conference coming up soon as well. Do you want to just give us the kind of the high level idea of what we mean by when we say DePin?
Yeah, of course. And I think the easiest way to think about it directly is kind of is the most successful and widely known crowdsourcing platforms or platforms that have used crowdsourcing as a mechanism to achieve great success, and that's Uber and Airbnb. And with decentralized physical infrastructure networks, it's really using tokens as a bootstrapping mechanism to incentivize people, usually all around the world, to connect their infrastructure to this open protocol that is ultimately a marketplace that should be more efficient at scale. So, and I guess really to back into that a little bit, because it can get a little bit technical and we can get a little bit further away from the point, but I think it's important just to look at Uber and Airbnb from their early beginnings, and also to even look at their prospectuses when they went public. Both Airbnb and Uber talked about how if it was possible and if the regulations permitted it, they would have given out equity to their supply side. They would have given out to the Uber drivers would have had equity, the hosts on Airbnb would have had equity. And I think if we kind of look at DePin networks more broadly, they are doing different. All of them are on a spectrum, right? But I think it's thinking about how you use decentralization across your supply side, across your demand side, and potentially across your governance to achieve major benefits in terms of your costs and scale. And that includes your speed at which you do so and ownership. And I think where DePin networks are different to these traditional networks that have created these marketplaces and incentives to crowdsource infrastructure and bootstrap themselves, DePin networks can actually, instead of just decentralizing or distributing the supply side like you have in Uber and Airbnb, they're also looking to decentralize across their demand side. So actually you can have a core protocol and many businesses built on top, all working together. And we can definitely get into that. I think that's quite exciting, which we haven't seen yet. I think some of the current DePin networks are doing that. And of course, that more broader question of ownership and governance of these platforms are often absolutely essential to everything that happens in our day-to-day lives. And do we want them to be more credibly neutral? Who should have a say over them? Who should benefit from the upside of that? And actually having that more open on blockchain rails, enabling more competition, creating more legitimacy, I think it's something that's probably close to the heart of a lot of people in the blockchain space. So it's again, and I guess one other point about the DePin network, again, why people are so excited about it, it's creating real positive value in the real world. So it's not purely speculative. It's looking at essentially existing industries or existing needs and making them better with blockchain. So it's not like just slapping on a blockchain because it sounds memeable or it's exciting or it kind of pulls on some of your kind of emotional threads. It really has to deliver something 10x better across different vectors that matter to people. And I think that's just a great story for blockchain more broadly. And yeah, certainly for me as a personal belief, I think as we look to the growth and legitimacy, size, the vibrancy of this space over the coming years, I do think DePin will have a massive part to play in that, because I think people's eyes are now opening up to the power of token incentives when done correctly. Similarly, when you actually really coordinate and align people on a proper mission in terms of what that looks like, in terms of having a community working with you instead of just one potentially massive team of thousands of people working for one big centralized company. How about lots of hundreds of potentially teams of 10 people working with you all around the world? And can we do that better? I like to think we can. I think that's the bet I think a lot of us are making. But yeah, there's still a lot to play for, but that's kind of broadly what we're doing in DePin, is using these incentives to get people to build out this physical infrastructure in the real world to create essentially better online digital services. Because at the heart or the backbone of all of these digital services, like compute, like storage, like indexing, like RPC for Pocket, like training up these machine learning models for Jensen, there has to reside some infrastructure somewhere, some kind of some nodes, some data centers, whatever that may be, and we can kind of coordinate the bootstrapping of that to build something better online.
Yep. Again, very well said, Dermot. And I like the fact that, as well as being able to more effectively coordinate the different efforts of various humans around the world, there's also, of course, a slightly darker, more paranoid angle, if you like, because it's crypto. So I was just going to read some. This is some fantastic copy I found on the website for the DePin Summit. It says 2023 is on track to be the hottest year in recorded history. Rising sea levels have made coastal population centers uninsurable. Modern encryption is dangerously close to being compromised, and now we have evidence perhaps of alien life on Earth. We are once again living in a chaotic era, and while we all share the same Earth, incentives rule human behavior, and the establishment protects itself first. The federal government safeguards its own data against quantum attacks. The senators are issued satellite phones for when cell towers fail. United's CEO flies private while his customers sleep in airports. Do you really think they'll protect you and your family when the shit really hits the fan? Because someday soon humanity will no longer be able to rely on fragile centralized systems for our critical communications, energy, transportation, positioning, and compute. The only way out, of course, is open networks, a resilient infrastructure that protects all citizens, not just senators and executives. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, as I say, paranoid, but yeah, I kind of get it. I like it, Dermot.
Yeah. I mean, and at Pocket, I mean, our core underlying purpose is to power unstoppable open data. I have to admit, I think a lot of that wording in that piece is, it kind of gets you going as an exciting. However, I think a great takeaway, and we may go into this in terms of the pitfalls when building out a DePin network, is to focus too much sometimes on the absolute edge cases. I think you need to be fully protecting against that and thinking deeply about it. But if you truly want to be successful, you need demand. And I guess an example of Pocket is when we say unstoppable, we do mean that we are designing something that is truly more reliable, more redundant, more robust than anything you could possibly build on your own as a centralized company. And that's because in Pocket, we don't just have one company running different data centers around the world. We have currently 20,000 different node runners staked all over the globe with all different setups. So for whatever network that you want to send transactions to or query the data from, whether it's Ethereum, Polygon, or the other 39 or so blockchains that Pocket supports. These infrastructure providers are running different setups, whether it's hard metal, maybe some run on cloud, more and more on hard metal, different client setups, everything else. So the likelihood of all of them going down at once is extremely marginal. But the other side of Unstoppable for us is also thinking that, again, we want the space. We're extremely, everyone keeps saying it, we're super early, but we are super early. So when we have 1,000x more demand, can the infrastructure providers handle the scale? And by distributing across more and more actors who can scale up based on purely the incentives, that's so much quicker and helps us achieve scale that's much, much harder to do on your own, just because of the inherent costs involved in that, that things would break and everything else. So yeah, I agree. I think it's important to cater for all these actors. And actually, when you have open rails, again, you can think about just the ancillary benefits, which I guess aren't primary, but are very much primary to some. And that includes privacy. That includes an open protocol that no one can be censored from. And maybe that is also something that we can kind of get into if you want to pull out some of the benefits of just having this open protocol and kind of looking across some of these vectors of perhaps some apply demand and governance, how things look differently versus what it's like if you just have an ordinary company.
Okay, well, let's do that then. So, yeah, how will things be different?
Yeah, and again, we can maybe use parallels to likes of Uber, Airbnb, and also kind of what we're kind of doing in the current DePin networks of today. And I guess I touched upon some of them on the supply side with Pocket, the fact that you can be distributed across the globe. And similarly, I think the existing Web2 companies that I've used, kind of the crowdsourcing kind of effects and the marketplace techniques, they've largely focused on supply first and have been pretty successful at that. I think it's more interesting to look at the demand side. And you say, look at Uber, where it's a pretty profitable company now, relatively so. It wasn't so clear for so long. They've had so much competition. They've had regulatory issues. They've had all these localization issues, whether it's language, whether it's kind of anything else. And, you know, Airbnb is slightly different, but it also has had plenty of competition. How about if you had an open protocol that really connected and coordinated these core use cases? So again, in Uber, is it simply if someone who wants a taxi connecting to someone who could do that for them? In Pocket's case, again, it's someone who wants to have any RPC access and connecting to any of the different blockchains around the world. It's just coordinating that. And then on the demand side, instead of actually the same team who built the protocol actually building how you interface with that, enabling hundreds, if not thousands, of different kind of companies to build a typical Web2 business on top. That could be an app, that could be a interface on top, that could maybe actually cater to certain regulation requirements. Maybe they will take a certain view on, say, OFAC. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will offer additional incentives on top. It just means that you all of a sudden, instead of having one company trying to do absolutely everything for everyone and probably pissing off everyone in the process, you have everyone actually coordinating together. So kind of you have this kind of beautiful dance of collaboration and competition where all the demand side kind of apps on top, you can actually cater for hyper local market needs, because someone will realize I actually know a customer base in a certain developer community or a certain country or whatever that is, and I can target them. And instead of having to bootstrap everything on the supply side myself, I can leverage this decentralized network to give me that supply side, and I can build a business on top. So I'm technically competing with some of the other demand side entities built on top of the protocol, but actually we're kind of collaborating because we're all probably contributing to the underlying protocol to make that better and better and more efficient, more cost effective, more reliable, more performant, because that actually is what sustains our business needs. So I think that for me is super interesting. I think competition is really helpful for everyone, but actually if you can still actually align people around a similar kind of open source values, and still get people working together on what matters, and then you really do have a kind of a true meritocracy where if you don't like the business that's serving you that kind of core service, so in the DePin sector, again, that could be eventually your Wi-Fi connectivity, it could be your compute, your storage, whatever else, because there's an underlying protocol, you can actually just access a new gateway yourself, or you can connect to the, yeah, maybe that's a different and helpful point as well. With all these protocols, technically you can usually connect to the protocol itself. And I guess in the case of an Uber, that would be kind of, you're actually probably using kind of like a command line interface to pull up saying, I want a taxi outside my house in 5 minutes, which isn't realistic to most, but maybe if you're running a business, of course you do that. And similarly with Pocket, you can connect to the protocol directly, but actually that's really like the wholesale layer. And usually in kind of a wholesale business, you're dealing in massive volume. It's much worse UX because you usually have to buy in volume to make it make sense. Much clunkier user experience and all those kind of things. And realistically, most people want to pay for convenience. So I think it's really important that we don't, while we're building out these great benefits that come from decentralization, we cannot forget the fact that people pay for convenience and they won't suffer the poor UX just to get to access to some of these benefits. So I think while we're building out these networks, and again, massive cost and scale benefits, and also those ancillary benefits around privacy and censorship resistance, to truly succeed, we have to look and feel better than the Web 2 alternatives. And I think that's where some of the pitfalls have been for some of these teams in the past.
Yeah, very much agree, Dermot. And, you know, you said before that we are early, very early. And look, this is something that we understand in crypto. It is early, sometimes hard to, appreciate just how early perhaps it is. But you say on your websites, the first thing on your website, it says, we, the contributors to Pocket Network, are united in the mission to build censorship-resistant technology that will lay the foundation for reorganizing the world's institutions towards a more equitable, hyper-connected, interplanetary future. It's fantastic. I love it. Again, if we are early, you know, what kind of timeframes are we talking here? Because on one sense, Dermot, Uber and Airbnb, to use these examples, have a kind of, in some sense, come almost out of nowhere and kind of disrupted industries almost overnight, but, you know, over a year or a decade or so. But at the same time, the paradox is that, you know, it's, you know, Balaji always talks on crypto Twitter about how hard it is to build any kind of physical infrastructure in the US. Peter Thiel talks about this as well. It's very hard to build new physical infrastructure and get it done because of, you know, regulations and so on. Yeah, how do we think about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of timing, I think people will be surprised by how quickly DePin networks can start to command huge market values, and I think I think why it's actually an easier path for a lot of these DePin networks is because they are B2B. People will often not know they're using them. This is going to be in the back end, so kind of like Bankless used to talk about the DeFi mullet of like your typical banking interface in the front and DeFi in the back. Similarly, I think you're going to have a digital service that you care about, compute, storage, RPC, potentially GPU compute to train your ML training models. We're going to have blockchain rails in the back. In terms of the headwinds and tailwinds, it is hard to build out physical infrastructure for sure. I think you'll look at DePin networks. They're largely focused on convincing people who already run that infrastructure to connect it to your network. So in Pocket's case, while actually different people have spun up nodes for different blockchains that Pocket supports early on, because maybe previously they weren't infrastructure providers, so there is some net growth there. Actually, at scale, Pocket will expect to have, if you are running a full node to access Bitcoin, to access Ethereum, you're validating, you will connect that infrastructure to Pocket because you can get some additional marginal revenue for serving data requests for those blockchains. And that's just kind of a no-brainer. That's additional marginal revenue. It makes complete sense. That also means that the costs to the demand side are much lower because you just need a little bit of extra revenue to pay what is essentially just a little bit of margin on top of your fixed costs. So again, I guess that helps the build out somewhat. The fact that we're kind of largely talking about infrastructure that already exists. Again, in the case of, say, Jensen and the protocol they're building to aggregate all of the world's GPU compute into their own worlds, into this kind of world supercomputer that people can use to train up machine learning training models. They're talking to existing data centers, they're talking to existing providers, and there's a lot of spare capacity there. And the reason there's spare capacity for these centralized providers is because the one thing you do not want to do is break your SLA. And so that usually means there's guaranteed uptime requirements. And so that actually, to kind of be more direct on that, that means you probably don't want to be using more than roughly 60% of your capacity at any one time, because you know that there can be bursts of up to 50% more, 60% more of your capacity on any one day. So actually you could sometimes, maybe only for 1 to 5% of the time, being pretty close to 95% or risking kind of maxing out. But generally you don't want to be anywhere close to there, because that's a risk of everything blowing up and going down. So that's where a distributed network can really win, is because we have all of these different players who can just provide their additional capacity to this network. So no one's ever clocked at 100%. No one's ever likely to go down. I do think some of the DePin networks like Helium, for example, have actually done some pretty cool things where they've actually created whole new net growth of this infrastructure across the globe. I think there's been some issues there with how they've managed their token incentives, how they've actually managed their community, and actually how they've really truly empowered their community to do things other than just install some capacity. But again, going back to that question of like that kind of headwind, I think the interesting thing and where DePin networks can win as well is a lot of this infrastructure, as you said, if you're doing it in a massive centralized way, means you probably need a greenfield site kind of beside a local city. You're not going to be close to it because the cost can be too expensive. However, if you look at this kind of compute capacity, these servers on a slightly small to medium scale, there's lots of that in cities already. They're in offices, they're in people's homes. So again, if you can connect them to these DePin networks, that's where you start to get better performance for the demand side, because latency can be improved, because actually you're probably based closer to some of that infrastructure that might be running closest to you versus kind of that massive data center in US East and Virginia that's serving all of the East Coast of America. So I think that's clearly, there are some headwinds there, no doubt. And I think it's the fact that it's all distributed means it's harder for all of it to be shut down at any one point. At the same time, I think there's clear fact that everyone in the blockchain space cannot just be sitting on their hands and be kind of idly thinking, I'm just creating this technology, I don't need to be thinking about what the regulation or anyone else thinks. I think we clearly need to be advocating on behalf of what we're doing. I think DePin is a great story to tell people and to get in front of local governments and say, back off, relax. And while we're building this all to be unstoppable and censorship resistant, I think it is important to be able to show people these stories and get them on our side. And when you talk about the cost and scale benefits that really improve all of humanity, the fact that we aren't just giving power over some of these incredibly fundamental, almost close to human rights of compute, storage, training ML models, access to blockchains like RPC access, you can see why you don't want all of that power just in any one or two entities. It makes more sense to have that in an open source kind of platform where you have meritocratic rights to governance and so on and so forth. So I guess that's kind of some of the headwinds. In terms of the tailwinds, it's easier to build a blockchain these days. Pocket itself is in the course of going a major protocol upgrade, has some interesting plans ahead in terms of we can actually leverage a lot of the major new developments in the last kind of couple of years of how to build a blockchain. The Pocket currently is on its own application-specific blockchain. We're now leveraging actually a lot of the best-in-class infrastructure built by others, which really just brings down the cost and friction of building out some of these new networks. So I think that's super helpful. I think in terms of how we govern this, I think I talked about that being one of the major benefits earlier. I think it's fair to say that in crypto, we've been pretty bad at really thinking about governance in a proper, thoughtful way that moves beyond just replacing equity in a company for slapping a token on and giving everyone a vote. Again, I think this is an area where Pocket has been innovating. We actually see some other DAOs like Optimism in innovating. We hope to inspire others with what we're doing. And I guess kind of that is sort of a headwind and a tailwind, so to speak. So I guess going back to kind of that mission statement you talked about on our website, and our kind of Pocket's vision to ensure that the world's most important digital infrastructure is owned and governed by its users. If that is to come true, we need to make sure the systems we're building are more meritocratic than what exists in the current world. And again, not to kind of just talk down on the likes of Optimism or anyone else, but this is true for every DAO in the space. And Asari did a talk on this, a paper on this a few months ago, and they examined the Gini coefficient, the measure of inequality in all of these different systems. And they were able to show that all of the major DAOs, ENS, Optimism, so on and so forth, are more unequal than the most unequal countries in the world. I think the most unequal country in the world today is South Africa, which is a lot of wealth, but it's all kind of largely concentrated in the top 1%. So that's, if we're creating systems that are worse than the current world, we're going to lose all our legitimacy. So we need to be really, really thoughtful about that. Pocket, on the other hand, is, we haven't got this perfect at all yet, but I think we're in a better starting place. And Pocket is one person, one vote. And while we have this token, POKT, that coordinates all of the infrastructure provision that happens in the protocol, and you only get paid out if you do useful work, as the protocol, the blockchain kind of determines, and that's all kind of open and verifiable. Actually, to earn a governance right, to be able to vote on how the treasury is spent, how protocol upgrades happen, how key kind of economic parameters are updated, and so on and so forth, you need to earn it. It's kind of, we call it proof of participation. So that means you've been a really active node runner, you've been a contributor to the protocol, you've done things of impact that we care about, you're aligned with us, you've been an active user of the protocol, and then you can earn some governance rights. And that's currently one person, one vote. We're actually upgrading that to be a bit more dynamic and to recognize more types of contribution. And we will be recognizing somewhat people's token weights, but that's only in the case of them actually staking in the protocol to use it as it's expected, either on the supply or demand side. But on the flip side, if you're just giving someone who has a token and letting them to kind of vote on the most important things in your ecosystem, I just think that's fundamentally wrong. I think the reason people have done this was because they haven't got their economics right. So instead of being able to monetize their actual economics in the protocol, they monetize their governance. And I think that's just a highway to hell, really. So I think that's one of the tailwinds we need to overcome. I think more and more people are starting to realize that kind of token-weighted governance is not the answer. If we want these systems to be credibly neutral and look more like public goods, we need to be way more thoughtful about all that.
Yep. Very, very well said again, Dermot. And look, you mentioned the website again, and I hate to keep talking about it, but as we finish off this part of the podcast, what really struck me about the Pocket Foundation website, and I'll put a link in the show notes, listeners. It's just a text. It's just a text website, basic white text on black, and it's written in a very kind of neutral, techie tone. It reminds me very much of the Cypherpunk manifesto. It's written in the same kind of language, same tone. It's fantastic. Do recommend listeners read that. I guess just as we finish off this part of the podcast, Dermot, look, tell people where they can go to find out more about what you guys are doing at the Pocket Network, and what people should do if they do want to learn more, get involved.
Yeah, great. And as I said, I think core to our strategy is to harness the power. Harness the power of our community. So you can come to POKT.network and actually have a look at our broader website and see everything else. POKT Foundation is, I guess that's kind of very kind of core and kind of resonates strongly with us in terms of our constitution and how we set out everything in our ecosystem and understanding kind of the relevant separation of powers. But if you come to the website, POKT.network, you can click onto our forum. You can see kind of the various proposals that are up for debate. You can see what's interesting, exciting to you. Maybe make a proposal, make a comment, start to build up a name, join our Discord, and really just kind of wave your hand and kind of let us know what you're interested in. There's also a lot of different paths for you to get involved, whether you're a builder from different bounties, being able to put up ideas for suggestions to improve the protocol. And we've also opened up a few new mechanisms to enable people to get up and running quicker in terms of actually contributing something of value to our mission. And they're kind of these grant grants called sockets, which you can think like little seed, it's kind of seed investments into our different contributors, and they're kind of $1,000 to $3,000 a month for people just starting little experiments. It's like, oh, this is something interesting. I think that will actually help drive value in this area of our mission, and we have a kind of a clear mission, vision, and values, and also kind of areas that we're working on over the next 6 to 9 months together as a community. And we're also running these new RFP style processes called POPs, where there's different areas that we think are important, and we'll run an open process for anyone to put their name forward and give the reasons why they should win that grant to build out whatever that piece of infrastructure is. So yeah, kind of just come get involved, read into the docs, ask some questions, and yeah, feel free to tag me, Dermot O'Riordan, Zach, our head of community, Ben, our head of DevOps, or anyone else in the Foundation or Pocket team. I think you'll find it's quite welcoming and keen for new talent all the time.
Awesome. Links are in the show notes, folks. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll finish off. We'll have some fun. We'll run Dermot through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Back in 1 second.
This episode is sponsored by Coinsbee, your digital pocket for spending crypto. With an extensive selection of brands available in 185 countries and supporting over 200 cryptos, Coinsbee turns your digital assets into gift cards, game points, phone top-ups, and even Visa MasterCard prepaid cards. Plus, with fast checkouts using your favorite crypto, or even speedier with Binance Pay, Coinsbee makes it simple to spend your crypto. Visit Coinsbee.com today and get honey for your crypto money.
All right, we are back, and with Dermot O'Riordan. He's the director of Pocket Network Foundation. Dermot, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure. I wish I'd prepared better, but yeah, sure. Let's bring it on.
No need to prepare. Just going to run some questions at you, Dermot. Just want kind of quick, snappy answers because you're a talker. Hot take style. Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Question 1 for you. Dermot, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in the multi-chain opportunist spectrum. I think there's so much excitement, innovation, and I go, yeah, if you think Bitcoin has all the answers, I think it, as we kind of talked about earlier, it cannot solve all of the great things we can do with blockchain rails. So I firmly believe that the multi-chain ecosystem is here, and maybe that will all be on rollups connected to different blockchains like Ethereum and Cosmos and so on and so forth. But giving people more flexibility, more optionality is only good for humanity, I think.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion, Dermot?
Yeah, maybe this is kind of one of my. Well, yeah, I guess they're two kind of coupled beliefs. I guess one is that technology is a major leap for progress, and it only actually delivers that progress if actually it's delivering benefits to mankind. And then kind of the second part of that is how I kind of think about a lot of the things in crypto is that we typically over-index too much to using technical solutions to what are fundamentally human problems. So while crypto blockchains can solve a lot of problems, we often under-index on the human side of how we collaborate, how we align, how we work together. So yeah, that's, as a non-technical person, I guess that's a big focus for me, but it's something I think we can all be more thoughtful and mindful of. There's no binary answer. It's never just purely technology, and it's never purely just humans. Let's bring them together to deliver real results.
Okay, well, that's right. And on a kind of related subject then, Dermot, UBI as either a potential fix for AI-induced automation or just a potential solution to, extreme wealth disparity around the world in the future. But, what's the UBI? Is this a good idea? Perhaps like something like WorldCoin, for example, get the token incentives right and perhaps it works. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally wary of one big grand idea that will solve all of our problems. However, I'm all for experiments. So I kind of was naturally resistant to some of the stuff happening at WorldCoin. It just kind of made me feel a little bit icky, but at the same time, they've clearly built some great technology or getting some adoption. So I want to see lots of experiments, and I don't like the idea of one grand answer. I think we're going to run UBI. I think there should be ideally hundreds of these different programs running around the world tailored for different use cases, not having one major world government doing so. But yeah, I mean, all for experimentation.
Sure. All right. Well, sci-fi author William Gibson famously said, Dermot, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Yeah, I mean, I just say probably anyone listening to this podcast, really, because I think the rest of the world thinks that crypto is dead and isn't happening. But I think we're all here because we believe and we see the impact on our daily lives, even using stable coins or storing wealth on digital rails and blockchains. So I think this is only the beginning of what will be a much bigger story.
Yes, indeed. And that brings us to pretty much our final question, Dermot, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Oh, great question. I'm actually looking around at some of the books in my office here, but I think the one that immediately comes to mind is The Three-Body Problem. I absolutely loved it and was blown away by it. Yeah,
and the reason I laugh is because I've done maybe around 400 episodes of this podcast, Dermot, and the three-body problem it's definitely one of the recurring answers to that question. One of my good friends, one of my best crypto buddies. Shout out to Brett in Australia. He is reading The Three-Body Problem at the moment because he's listened to this podcast so many times and heard so many people recommend it. And then we've got a DM conversation going back and forth at the moment because it's a trilogy, I think, right? And he read the first one and he was a bit, I don't know if this is good, Andy. Why is everyone recommending it? And then he thought about it and he came back and said, no, I'm reading the second one now. It's really good, Andy. It makes a lot of sense. You've got to read it. So yeah, anyway, there you go.
That's funny. Okay, yeah. Not an original answer, but yeah, it's amazing, and I'm excited for Brett.
And well, there you go, Brett. We're excited for you to get through the second book. And did you know that I believe it is Netflix? They have there's I guess a TV adaptation is due to screen drop on Netflix next year, I believe.
Yeah, from the makers of Game of Thrones, supposedly.
Is it?
And Wild Game of Thrones. And the last couple of seasons were horrendous as they rushed it. I think the first 4 or 5 seasons were brilliant. So yeah, I'm excited. As long as they don't take their eyes off the ball and try to rush things again, I think it should be pretty epic.
That's right. All right. And just to finish off, Dermot, I have to ask, just for the benefit of listeners from the rugby countries, such as Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, the UK, and other parts of the world as well. But of course, we have a World Cup coming up, in what, a week or two, a couple of weeks away, Dermot?
Yeah, I think it starts 4 or 5 weeks away. Yeah,
4 or 5 weeks away. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Middle of September. Yeah, it feels like around the corner, but yeah, very, very close at this stage anyway.
Who do you like?
I mean, I'm from Ireland, from Dublin. Played kind of rugby in school and university, and even actually over here in London when I moved over. But yeah, so I'm Ireland true and true. Although, as I kind of mentioned earlier before the call, hope is a terrible thing. So I think Ireland have their best chance ever, but the side is stacked with the top 5 best teams in the world, all competing for the 2 places at the semi-final. So I'm pretty nervous about that. I think New Zealand are looking great. I think France are at home. They have some amazing players. South Africa are obviously good, but I think it's probably between Ireland, New Zealand, and France, to be honest. And Ireland are going to most likely play one of them in the quarterfinals. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, look, it is exciting, and look, France they've been a bogey or a boogie team, if you like, for the All Blacks on at least 2 occasions in the past, which you're probably aware of. But yeah, I mean, as I said to you before the show, Ireland, yeah, they really, really good team now, and it's fantastic to see. So yeah, well, can't say anything else except go the mighty All Blacks, Dermot.
I'll be cheering them on for as long as they're not playing Ireland. So yeah, no, I always love watching the All Blacks. So yeah, fingers crossed we don't meet until the final.
All right. Well, good stuff, man. It's been fantastic talking to you today. It's always good when you can go deep into the weeds on, something new from the crypto ecosystem that you're not too familiar with, and then go through the wonderful world of sci-fi and end up talking about rugby. So that's a good podcast on my book, Dermot. Finish it off just again by telling people where they can find you on Twitter or wherever else you like to hang out online. And again, just shout out those Pocket Network websites.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again, Andy. This is a great chat. I really enjoyed it, and then it really kind of flew by, which is always a good sign. Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. You can find me Dermot _O'Riordan, ORIORDAN. The kind of the long and confusing Irish name. And I'll also just come on to POKT.network, and that'll link to our forum, our Discord. For Pocket, you'll see our docs, and hopefully you can start to go down the rabbit hole. And again, just feel free to call me out, at me on forum or Discord or anywhere else, and you probably find me on Telegram through that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, my man. All the best, and bye for now.
Cheers, Andy. Absolute pleasure.
All right, there you go. That was Dermot from Pocket Network. Fascinating talking to Dermot. Yeah, great to have an Irishman on the show. Cool to talk about rugby, and of course DePin. So as I say, it's a varied show full of different topics for people with particular interests, such as my man Brett. I'm sure Brett. Yeah, I'm sure he's listening and having a little chuckle to himself as another person selects the three-body problem. So I'm sure, like Brett is Eli Herf is his, I guess, crypto identity. Brett's been on the show a few times. He's head of community growth at Gamma. The ordinals and all that kind of stuff. Marketplace for Stacks and Bitcoin collections, NFT collections, and the Stacks Parrot NFTs. He runs that as well. Brett will come back on the show. Don't worry about that. And when he does, I'm sure we can get his extremely well considered review of the three-body problem. But no spoilers, Brett, because I think, as much as I say, I've said it a million times on the show, I should read it. I don't think I'm going to read it because I want to now watch, I want to wait for the Netflix show, Game of Thrones, doing the three-body problem. It's going to be epic. So I think I want to go into that show not really knowing what's about to happen. So I'm sure we'll have Brett on to talk about it in a non-spoiler way. Do you think we can do that? We'll figure it out. All right. Thank you so much to Dermot for coming on the show. As I say, DePin wasn't really familiar with it, but it's fascinating, the idea of decentralized physical infrastructures that leverage blockchain technology. Of course, makes perfect sense. What an incredible world we live in, man. And there's a Rugby World Cup next month. There you go, folks. All right, I think that's the end of the show. Thanks for listening, team. Make sure you are subscribed to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are listening in. All good. I'm off to have a whiskey. It's nighttime here. See you, folks. See you next time. Bye for now. This was the Crypto Conversation for